What up, meatheads? In this episode of the podcast, I had the great opportunity to talk to what I like to consider a new good friend of mine, Kait Young, owner of Straight to Summit Pet Foods. If you want to know anything about raw pet food, if you are at a butcher shop and you want to develop your own pet food out of your waste, please listen to this before you do that. There's great tips and tricks. And I just hope you enjoy. It's a great conversation to get off the rails and back on the rails. It goes all over the place, and I hope you enjoy it during your quad.
Good cutting enhances the quality of good meat. Poor cutting results in an inferior piece of meat, regardless of quality.
Hello. How are you? How's Canada?
It's full of frogs trying to fuck, mostly.
Oh.
There's a swamp across the street from my house and like 18,000 frogs in it. So, yeah.
That's
just, it is. We have a bunch of herons that like to come and hang out. They're our favorites, pretty much. They'll just you'll get like 10 of them all over the way around the swamp, and they'll just wait and then swoop in, fuck off with a frog. Yeah. How was your Easter Sunday?
Easter was fun. The Easter egg hunt and all that fun jazz. But Kait, yeah. So tell me about yourself. So you're from Canada, and
I'm from Canada.
Yes. Is your favorite TV show Degrassi?
Well, I did have to watch a lot of Degrassi growing up in planning class. It's kind of like home ec and a bunch of other stuff all rolled into one.
We call that
surprisingly not. Yeah, you get to watch all of the very special episode ones from the early 90s.
Okay.
It's a good time. No, favorite TV show?
Yeah.
Is I'm deeply embarrassed to say this. I'm a huge horror fan, and I've been watching the show Supernatural since I was 14 years old.
Oh, really?
And at this point, I just can't stop. It just keeps getting worse and worse. But it's been such a time commitment that I feel like I can't not watch it.
Yeah, my brother and his wife, they watched that show, and I found out, and I felt embarrassed for them.
Yeah.
So
I mean. I was 14 when I started watching it. That's my excuse. Why I'm still watching it when I'm nearly 30 is something I'd, rather not talk about.
Yeah, my brother is in his 40s, so he has no excuse.
Yeah, he has absolutely no excuse.
Yeah. So tell me about, I want to talk, about who you are and how you got into you saw a need for the business that you started, and how you took the steps to source responsibly, and even what that business is.
So I grew up here on the island, about an hour south of where my business is based now and where I live now. And so really the start of the whole thing was I have a dog. He's very spoiled. He looks like a Muppet. His name is Eddie. And we figured out when he was about 3 months old that he can't eat anything, basically. And so we switched him to a raw food diet because he just has such troubles with starches and stuff like that. I started making my own treats then just for him and stuff. And people kept trying to buy them from me, basically. But we were over in Vancouver, which, large city, not a huge amount of beautiful pastoral space. And so I was getting all of my things from grocery stores and stuff like that. And I'm saying so much.
I replaced my ums with just the Ira Glass stutter of just like that.
Yes, This American Life.
Yeah. and then I used to edit them all out, and I used to be see, there's
it seems like a lot of work.
Yeah, so I just, one, I think I feel like I cut down on it, and then two, I don't listen to the episodes at all before I release them anymore. Unless I feel I said something that would be taken in the wrong context, or if I just don't remember at the end of the episode. So
totally fair.
Yeah. So don't worry about it.
As I do it again, just get super self-conscious of it.
It's okay. Everyone knows you're doing it now.
It's true. This is all going in. So we moved to the Comox Valley. It's February 2018. So that's kind of where I realized that I could actually start a business. We initially moved to Campbell River, which is about 45 minutes north of here and has some fantastic salmon fishing. Mm-hmm. So we were living there and working in Courtenay, and the highway between the two goes like all the way along the ocean, and then you get into this whole huge expanse of agricultural land reserve, and it's just full of small family farms. You know, a few of them have been in operation for 150 plus years kind of thing. And it's just fields full of animals. Mm-hmm. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, you know, maybe this is something where I can do that thing that people have asked me about and do it in the way that I want to do it, which is, you know, sourcing from people that I know, sourcing from people that I get to go out and meet, and, you know, when it's not the times of the human coronavirus, shake hands and all of that kind of stuff. And that's kind of, you know, I can make dog treats, but I think the more important thing is connecting the people who are buying them to the people who are actually producing the animals that I'm using for what I make.
Yeah, and I think it's also super important because a lot of the quote unquote byproduct of, you know, certain trotters or certain tendons and things like that, or even trachs, may end up in rendering, or at worst case, landfill. So it's really trying to find that balance of, or helping provide that whole carcass utilization for the farmer, as well as having a positive impact on other animals' lives as well. You know,
totally, and that's part of it too. Like, obviously, at this point, like I'm not the biggest business out there by any means, but if the small amount of impact that I can make and hopefully keep continuing to make in terms of creating additional revenue streams for the farmers with the waste products that I get, like, you know, I get somebody will do a batch of lambs and I'll get hides and ears and trotters and all of that stuff that, like you said, would otherwise go to rendering or into the hot compost or whatever it is. And then, you know, I run down to the processor, I grab it, they tell me how many animals I sent or they sent down, and I pay them for that. And that's, you know, it's an amount of money that they otherwise weren't getting before. And if it helps make the margins just a little bit easier, then I'm all for it, basically.
And what year did you start doing this?
So when we moved, I started getting to know the farmers and started buying all of the stuff for Eddie's food, because I make all of his food because I'm a crazy person. And so I started kind of building those relationships with them as when we moved, but I didn't actually open up until October. So I spent about 8 months doing recipe testing and figuring all stuff out, figuring out my shelf lives, figuring out how to make sure I'm making a shelf stable product, you know, reading up on, especially for some of the weirder stuff that I get, how to control pathogens and stuff like that. Make sure, especially for fur on items or like hides and stuff like that, obviously those do have the potential for E. coli contamination. So using standardized procedures for controlling pathogens, that kind of thing, and as well reading up on sort of like bone structure, like molecular structure and all that kind of stuff, and making sure that I can make bone treats and chews or bone-based ones that are going to be safer and not destroy the collagen matrix of the bone itself, like you'd get with like a smoked bone. Mm-hmm. Like the pet store bones, your dog bites it and it shatters into a million little tiny splinters.
Yeah.
So figuring out how to avoid that, which I managed to successfully do, thankfully.
Nice. Yeah, because that's something that I've always told when I worked in a retail shop, that I would get these customers who would want a marrow bone for their dog. And I would say, no, because long bones or weight-bearing bones could fracture going with the bone, which could cause splinters. And I was just repeating something that someone said to me. So I don't even know if that's true. So really what I'm asking a question. Is that true?
Yes and no. So with bones are basically, it's a collagen matrix that's been mineralized, and that gives it its hardness. But those collagen fibers are all kind of like lined up in rows all along, and they're all flush against each other. So when you're heat processing to the extent that you're damaging that collagen matrix and you're denaturing that collagen protein, which happens around 160 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay. That's
when you're having issues with splintering and shattering is when that structure is compromised by heat. As far as weight-bearing bones for dogs, I really don't recommend any sort of cow weight-bearing bones. A live cow is 1,200 pounds, and they're standing with 80% of their weight on their front legs, 40% per leg, for their 23 plus hours a day. So those bones are so densely mineralized that when you're getting into the battle of the strength of the dog's tooth versus the strength of the bone, then you're looking at stuff like slab fractures or even full cracks through the tooth. And that requires a root canal if you're fancy, or extraction of the tooth. So I don't do any sort of cow weight-bearing bones, and I don't recommend them for anyone unless you are really, really confident that your dog isn't going to chomp down on that bone. But anything up to, like, depending on the size of your dog, my rule of thumb for weight-bearing is hang weight of 4 to 5 times the weight of your dog. So for my dog, who weighs 40 pounds, 45 pounds, his max would be like a conventional market hog.
Okay.
That would be the biggest leg bone that I would feed him. And that's, it's something that needs to be adjusted on a by dog basis based on like how much they like to chew, how they chew. Like if they're one of the ones that shoves like the entire thing in their face and clamps down on it like a vice, or if they've ever had tooth injuries before, if they've ever cracked or chipped teeth or anything like that. So it's more of a flexible scale. Like you can do it, but I would say like beef, bison, elk, all of that stuff is just like a hard no, regardless of how big your dog is. Unless you have like a Caucasian shepherd, and those things weigh like 250 pounds. So
yeah. Well, that's great. Yeah, I think that's going to clear up a lot of information just out there. I never knew any of that stuff. And then
I told you I did a lot of research.
Yeah. Well,
research and testing.
Well, another thing too is I hear, I see, like, I even worked at a place that made a quote unquote raw dog food using chicken backs and grinding and organ meats and things like that. But there was no strict recipe. There was no, it was more of like, it wasn't done right, I feel like. And I just want you to talk about how important it is not to just use your butcher shop scraps and make your own dog food, but there has to be a balance of like, proteins and fats and things like that.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, if anyone is actually interested in trying to do a raw dog food, getting in touch with somebody who's an NRC dog nutritionist, or you can get some that are like online. It's like certified raw or dog nutrition specialist. They're not great. If you find somebody who's NRC, that's National Research Council. So that does standards, I believe, for both Canada and the US. They do have a great book. It's the nutrient requirements of dogs and cats, which lays out literally everything. Other than that, though, if you're trying to do it yourself, it's a pretty fine ratio, and it's something that is kind of should be customized for your dog. You don't want more than 10% fat, maybe like 12, depending on what you're doing. But for the average dog, you're probably going to want to be around, a 5 to 10% fat percentage in there. Lower is always better. For bone, 10 to 15%. The standard is generally around 10%. But if half of your grind is chicken backs, or half of your grind by weight is chicken backs, you're getting way too much bone in there. And that high level of calcium can actually be incredibly detrimental for certain life stages of dogs, especially large breed puppies. Too much, too little calcium, all of that kind of stuff. Your standard is sort of like it's an 80-10-10, 80% muscle and meat, 10% bone by weight. So, if you're grinding in like meatier bones, you need to figure out how much of that is actually bone versus how much of that is going to be sort of like meat or fat that's left on those carcasses. And then the final 10% is organ, and that should be 5% liver and 5% other secreting organ. So that's kidneys, spleens, pancreas, brains, if you can get them, basically only from pork. If you've got veal sweetbreads, anything like that. So hearts, lungs, tripe don't count under that secreting organ category. You really need those organs that are providing sort of essential functions within the homeostasis of, or the regulation sort of processes within the body. So you can try and do it yourself, but as a general rule, a butcher shop is probably not going to have all of the things on hand that they need in order to do that. Because I've never seen a butcher shop that's getting 20 pounds of spleens a week or whatever it is. And on top of that, you need a rotation. So in order to ensure that you're getting a full range of amino acids, you want to be rotating between 4 to 6 different proteins regularly through your dog's diet. So if somebody comes to your butcher shop and if your butcher shop, you're probably getting chicken, beef, and pork.
And one lamb. Maybe
some turkeys once in a while, one lamb. And so that's going to be the basis of what you're getting is, your chicken, beef, and pork. And especially from conventionally sort of like grain-fed animals, you're getting much higher saturated fats. You're getting omega-3 to 6 ratio that's much more in favor of the omega-6s, which are actually, they have proven it, they are inflammatory, or they can cause inflammatory responses within a body. Chicken by itself, it's not something that contains all of the nutrients required for dog survival. So if somebody comes to you and they're buying that and it's too much fat and it's not enough whatever and there isn't enough organs in it, you can theoretically make a dog very, very sick if they're only feeding them whatever you're providing. If it's something that you still want to do, feel free to sell all of that kind of stuff, but with a caveat that it needs to be part of an overall diet. It's not a complete diet in and of itself.
Yeah, don't rely on it.
And there's very much a place for that kind of stuff. Yeah, exactly. And there's very much a place for that within the industry, and it's something that you can. So there's a place for those sort of accessory products within the industry, as long as people are being made aware that it's not a complete diet and it should be part of, your dog's overall diet, and, a small part depending on kind of what's in it.
Yeah. No, that's huge, I think, because I certainly knew people that would, I don't know, that when I worked in LA would be like, oh, my dog loves this stuff. This is all I feed my dog. And just being naive in the industry, I hope that we didn't do anyone harm or anything like that. But I think it's important for people to know what they're selling.
For sure. And the thing, raw diets are obviously becoming a lot more popular with dog owners and even cat owners, ferret owners. Who owns a ferret? Cat snakes.
Yeah.
But they're becoming a lot more popular, and it's not the same thing as feeding your dog kibble. Mm-hmm. You can go to Walmart and buy the crappiest kibble has maybe 5% actual meat in it. Mm-hmm. But that kibble has been standardized and tested and formulated to ensure that it meets all of the nutritional requirements. Mm-hmm. And raw food doesn't do that. So there is a very real risk of causing potentially very harmful and in some cases even fatal nutritional deficiencies within dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely something to keep consumers aware of, and ensure that you're not misrepresenting a product. And if you do want to bring some extra stuff in and try and make a complete product, there are resources for that. There's blogs if you have somebody who wants to try and do it themselves, or somebody within the shop who wants to learn about that and kind of take the helm on that. I believe it's Raw Fed and Nerdy. They have a spreadsheet that I like to recommend to everyone who is starting out in that kind of thing. And then, there are professionals that exist specifically for these purposes, which is tailoring and creating balanced raw food diets.
What are you drinking right there?
It's a beer.
Oh.
My husband homebrews.
Okay.
And he made this, and I asked what it was, and he said that it's a beer. Oh. It's almost a West Coast pale ale, but kind of, it's got a little bit of haze to it.
Yeah.
It's really into these weird Norwegian creek yeasts that will ferment out a beer in like 3 days flat.
Yeah. I don't know anything about
he got I used to work in the beer industry for a while, so I had to learn things, and then be mansplained by 19-year-olds who had just started learning about beer. And I was like, dude, I've been doing this for like years. Good times.
I don't know. I never got over when I was a little kid and I like drank my dad's beer, and then like you get that weird like and like that feel it back here. And that's still how it is when I drink a beer.
Yeah.
And then I'll also say that for me personally, I like the result of drinking, not the journey.
I think I'm journey focused. Mm-hmm. There is a button, and it was like, you push this button, you can drink as much as you want and never experience any health effects. Mm-hmm. But the trade-off is that you can't ever get drunk again. I would definitely push that button.
Really?
Just drink like Boulevardiers for breakfast.
Yeah. Someone asked me, could I live without alcohol or coffee? And I don't know. I want to exist in a world without either. So what would you choose, alcohol or coffee?
I think I would rather live in a... Wait, is the world without coffee? Does that mean that there's no caffeine at all? Or I just have to like choose if I want caffeine, I have to get it from a different source?
Let's say you have to get it from a different source.
Oh yeah, fully. I would live in a world without coffee.
Okay. I enjoy coffee. I
Yeah.
think it's just because it's part of my ritual so much.
I do. I very much enjoy my coffee in the morning, but I think that it's kind of, I don't know, it's less of a, what's the word that I'm looking for? I don't know. It's less of like a focal point in the things that I do in my life.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, I drink a coffee in the morning in order to wake up.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I'm doing like social stuff, you know, I'm going and meeting friends at the brewery for a beer.
Yeah.
Or, you know, I go out to a nice restaurant and we get like some nice cocktails or a nice bottle of wine or whatever it is. And a lot of my sort of like social life is built around eating and drinking.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that a world without alcohol would be a much more drastic change to the overall way that I live my life.
Yeah. I just hope we don't end up in a world without social interactions, personally. Because I think that's it.
The world that we're currently living in.
Yeah. No, I had to go to the grocery store the other day, and I stayed in the car, and my wife went in. I put her at risk. No, she just knows what we need, and I just have no idea about that. But so she gloves up, masks up, everything like that, and is walking in the store and is like uncomfortably walking around people to avoid people. And there's like whole families going in the store and whole like I just look and it's like, oh, we're not going to get through we're going to fail this test. That's how I see it.
Oh, for sure. Like, I mean, every time I've been cutting back on my errands as much as I possibly can, you know, doing farm pickups to, you know, every other week or processor pickups and that kind of stuff. If I'm running errands, I'm doing them all on one day, and I've got hand sanitizer in the car in between and stuff like that. And every single place that I go, there is somebody who is over the age of 65 because we're a bit of a retirement community here. They like to say it's the newlywed and nearly dead.
Okay.
And so I'll go in places and it's all older people who are statistically the most at risk from this virus, who are wandering around, not social distancing, shaking hands with people, you know, walking close to people, all of that kind of stuff. And it's deeply frustrating because we're doing all of this in order to protect vulnerable populations and protect everyone really, but especially people who are immunocompromised or particularly at risk from the virus. And just like seeing people going out and completely ignoring all of that, it's really frustrating. And it means that this is just going to be happening longer for everyone else.
Imagine and I'm in America where we're only as good as the thing is like you're strong as your weakest link, or you're only as good as your worst player. We have states that just like last week put in social distancing guidelines. states that were allowing people to go to beaches and all this stuff. And it's just like a religious leader saying, like, you can't stop us from holding Easter Mass. It's essential. How could you say it's not an essential business? Or like, and it's like,
because it's a group of people, more than 5 people in one place.
Yeah. Also, you
like,
could
telecast your.
Yeah. I can't make groceries in my house, but I could worship God in my house. That's the difference. Yeah. Yeah. It's
True.
I don't know. Like I was saying last night in the live session, I'm letting this show the cracks in my political beliefs through social media, which I've always tried to be agnostic.
It's fair, especially as somebody who's like a business, and even if you don't think of yourself that way, I mean, you kind of got a brand going on here, right? And it's really hard to balance doing the things that you really believe in and trying to be sort of appealing to people. I get it.
So, cultural differences. Canada?
Yeah, I mean,
what do you call a Coca-Cola? Do you call it a Coke, a pop, or a soda?
Well, I mean, like Coca-Cola itself, the brand,
or just like
I would call it Coke.
Okay.
But that's highly regional. It's the same as in the US.
Yeah.
I would usually say pop.
Uh-huh.
But I know that people out east, I believe, they say soda.
Yeah.
But we don't have anyone that just calls any sort of soft drink a Coke.
Yeah.
That's like a Southern US thing, isn't it?
Yeah, where every soft drink is a Coke.
Yeah.
We always, when I grew Southern California, we called every soda a soda, just like I'm going to go get a soda. But here, my wife turned, like, because she's from up here, that it's pop, or it's all pop. I'm going to get a pop.
Yeah. And, I'd go down to Seattle and people would say that I had an accent or whatever, but I find that, at least I'm from BC, I grew up here and everything. And I find that linguistically and like slang wise, we're really, really similar to Americans, or like at least from Washington State. We do have our own things, like a Mickey. You know what a Mickey is?
It's like
it's a 375 ml bottle of liquor, like the half.
Oh, like a Mickey.
Half 2.6.
Yeah, we used to call those would be like Mickey hand grenades or Mickey wide mouth 40s with the B on it.
No.
Is it? But that was a brand.
A pony is even half the size of a Mickey. It's 13 ounces, and then you get a pony, and that's like 6.5 ounces or whatever.
Okay.
And then like a regular bottle of alcohol would be a 2.6.
Weird.
That's a 26 ounce.
Uh-huh.
And then you get a 40, which is 40 ounces.
Okay.
And then you get the real big one. That's called a Texas Mickey.
Okay. But because like
Oliver's.
Because Mickey for me was it was a brand of malt liquor that came in 40 ounces, and it had they made it illegal because like the cap was like that big. I'm doing visuals on a podcast, but it was a very big cap, and so you could drink it quicker. And they made that illegal in California or in America. I think all liquor caps have to be like a standard size now or something.
Oh man, that's hilarious. Yeah, we get like Old English has the small cap, but we get Big Bear and Colt 45 40s.
Uh-huh.
Big Bear is mostly in Alberta. It's horrible.
Uh-huh.
Never drink it. But they've got the ones that are like I'm trying to think of not a Canadian.
It looks like a pog.
I mean, like a pog. Perfect. Yeah, because they're like a little bit bigger than a toonie.
Yeah.
which is our $2 coin.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the ones that are like pog sized, you can still get those up here.
I
haven't had one since I was like 19 though.
What, Colt 45? We've talked a lot about music before.
Any malt liquor.
Oh.
Yes.
I haven't had since I was in my early 20s. We used to drink Brass Monkeys all the time, where you take a bottle of OE 800 and drink it down to the label and fill it up with orange juice.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think we traveled in some of the same circles, but many miles apart.
Yeah.
Because that was also a popular thing in the hardcore scene up here. So
yeah, we would also do what do you call it? Like we'd call them sidewalk slammers, where you'd drink it down to the label, and instead of orange juice, you would fill it up with a can of Tilt, which is that flavored malt liquor. So it's malt liquor on top of malt liquor.
Oh no.
Yeah, I was a degenerate.
I was always a big fan of spicing it up. Instead of doing an orange juice Brass Monkey, I would get a pineapple mango passion fruit juice.
Ooh.
Throw that in there, you know, just a little bit of it was great for the summertime, like sitting on my roof when I lived in Calgary, just drinking 40s.
Yeah.
Good times.
Playing Edward 40 hands. That was my favorite.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
One time we tried to play Edward 40 hands, but we didn't have enough money for 6 40s. So we played 40 cubed, in which we bought 3 40s and then duct taped 3 people into a triangle. And they each had a 40.
That is amazing. And if you don't know what Edward 40 hands is, people, it's essentially duct taping a 40 to each of your hands. And you got to drink them before you piss your pants, because you need your hands to go to the bathroom.
It's very true. And you have to drink both of them before you're allowed to take them off.
Yes.
So you can't just drink one and then have one free hand. That's not in the spirit of the game. You have to finish both of them.
Exactly.
Before you can remove them.
Yeah. I will say you are allowed to finish one, free up 2 fingers, so you're allowed to smoke while you finish the other one. That's back when I was a smoker. But yeah. That is the rules. Yeah. Talking about music and stuff like that, because I was just thinking about Afro Man, Colt 45, and 2 Zigzags. But I think 2008, I was on the road with either the Warriors or Downpresser in Creatures. We played a couple shows on the island, some hardcore fest, and then we played a few shows in South or East Hastings at some like Chinese theater. Forget
Rickshaw.
Yeah. That was weird. East Hastings. I
used to live down there.
Oh, yeah, lovely neighborhood.
It is. I mean, you go and you see it, and you're like, "Holy crap! How is this a thing? Like, what is this?" And then, because I lived 4 blocks from the Rickshaw, so I was south 1 block, and then like 3 blocks over.
Okay.
So I was on like in Chinatown technically. But we lived there for 3 years. I'd previously lived in another building over in that area for like a few months. And it looks really crazy, but when you live there for a while, you realize how much of a community it is. And regardless of the fact that the community is comprised pretty much exclusively of people who are dealing with addiction, underhousing issues, mental health issues, people who are in like sex work and stuff like that. it is still very much a community, regardless of if it doesn't look like the community that you came from. I was living there during the overdose crisis, the fentanyl crisis that's still ongoing, but when it initially started, and there was a lot of like really grassroots stuff that was going on, people checking in on each other. You know, there was a couple of guerrilla unapproved safe use sites that were put up in alleys and stuff like that, and making sure that people were able to be safe. And yeah, it's a really like overwhelming place to be for just a little while, but once you're there for a bit and you get used to it, you realize really how tight-knit of a community it is.
Yeah. I think for me, because I was like, this 2008, so I was like 25, 24. That like, it was just like, like it was the first time of me seeing that, getting out of the van and seeing spent needles on the ground. And then lo and behold,
that did actually get cleaned up a lot.
Yeah. And I'm not trying to make it slam or anything, because the segue is then I moved to Vermont, and a lot of people don't realize Vermont is like the opiate crisis of America. You know,
oh yeah.
I would work on a line of slaughterhouse workers and start seeing people dozing off on the line because they're dope sick. And then then now I live in Washington. Across the bay is Everett, and Everett is the first city to do a lawsuit against Purdue Pharmaceuticals, who makes OxyContin.
Which they should.
Yeah. No, those people should be fucking killed. Do you listen to the Dollop?
Did you listen to the Behind the
Yeah,
I don't, but did you listen to the Behind the Bastards episode on the opiate crisis?
I've listened to every episode of that show.
Yeah, it's from like a year ago.
Okay.
It's a personal favorite of mine.
Have we talked about Behind the Bastards before?
Because I asked you about the war on everyone.
Oh, okay.
Going through the omnivore's dilemma again right now, which is something that I recommend everyone to either read or listen to. If you haven't read or listened to it, worthwhile. But yeah, as far as like podcasts, Behind the Bastards, the new one is good. Women's War.
Yeah, I'm an episode behind, but I listen to that. I would say, oh man, check out The Dollop. If you're a fan of comedy,
The Dollop.
Yeah, if you're a fan of comedy and phrases like, you know, there's only like, you know, 300 people in America making decisions, I feel like we could take them on. Like,
it's true.
Yeah,
they probably could.
Yeah,
I'll pull it up on my cool.
But it's an American history comedy podcast. And my favorite episode, or one of my favorite episodes, is they talk about the time America and Canada almost went to war over dividing up the islands in the Puget Sound.
Yeah, they did that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a very real thing.
Yeah.
There was also that time that we burned down the White House. Yeah. I mean, was it technically Canada? We hadn't actually confederated yet, but I think the sentiment is still there.
Yeah. I don't know.
War of 1812. Was it? Yeah, that's one.
The war of Canadian aggression. What?
Well, if we're gonna call it that, then it was still the British.
Okay. What? After we did that, what is your menu right now that you offer? For, what are you
treats?
Yeah.
Oh, geez. I have to look on my website for that. I've got tons of stuff. So basically how I operate right now, and how I'll continue to operate is I do a certain number of subscription boxes a month, especially because of the way that I source things and how many farms I'm going to, how many animals are being processed from each farm and all of that kind of stuff. I very frequently I'll get like 10 or 12 of something or just a few things. So I kind of did subscription boxes as a way to not only like keep down the amount of SKUs that I'm dealing with on my website, but people also really like subscription boxes. They pay me money. They tell me what their dog likes and doesn't like, and I send them a box every month or other month or every third month that's just full of stuff that they might not have otherwise gotten the opportunity to get, especially when you're dealing with such limited quantities of certain things. So I sent out my boxes in April, and then today I did my like release of my leftovers, basically. So I've got about 15 products that are sort of regular all of the time things, and I try and keep those in stock as much as possible. And then I have a rotating selection of kind of an additional 30 to 40 items. It's wild. Yeah, I've got 37 treats and 21 shoes. It looks like here. So one of the biggest ones that I do is I call them beef and tripe medallions. So, I mean, you've obviously smelled the smell of a unprocessed cow stomach.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, not a super nice smell, obviously.
I used to go to sleep and or wake up in the middle of the night and my hand would be here and just be embedded in my fingernails. It was
oh yeah. Yeah. So it's a deeply gross and also overwhelming and lingering smell. And then so obviously regular people who don't spend their lives working in animal processing, that kind of stuff, that smell is going to be at the very least turn their stomach. But dogs friggin' love it. They're obsessed with it. Dogs love eating poop. Dogs like the grossest things. Why do we love them?
Yeah.
But so basically I figured out a way to make it taste like tripe to the dogs and make the dogs want it as much as they would love just a full-on piece of super stinky plain like tripe, and make it not smell super offensive to humans. So, you know, it's like driving past a cow field, not being inside a dairy barn.
Okay. Yeah. So you get the essence of it. You get the essence, but it's not overwhelming. And it's just like, it's like a little bit, it's a hint of cow poopy, not being punched in the face with cow poopy. Yeah.
So that's kind of one of my like flagship products for sure. It's the thing that I kind of built this whole thing around when I accidentally invented them over leftovers from my dog's food. And so I do a mutton version as well. And I have a goat version right now, which will be sold out fairly soon. And so my biggest thing with treats is like, I find, especially with a lot of the natural and like single ingredient treats and stuff like that. I don't know if you ever give your dog these like dehydrated beef liver or whatever. No. You get a piece and you pull it out of the bag, and it's this big and it's a quarter of an inch thick, and that piece by itself weighs like 3 ounces. So my whole thing is like smaller pieces, things that are easier to break up. And instead of providing the same things that kind of a lot of natural treat companies do. Because for me, trying to sell a bag of beef liver from a slightly nicer source, it's a lot harder when somebody can go in and buy sorry, I'm trying to do conversions between grams and ounces in my head right now. They can go and buy like an 8-ounce or 250 gram bag of beef liver from the pet store for $8. And why the hell am I going to charge them 12 or 14 for a quarter of that amount?
Yeah. Don't worry about the conversion for the audience. For me, I know my conversion.
Basically, what I wanted to do was create something that wasn't even. I wanted to create treats that weren't just nicer in terms of like sourcing and where it's all coming from and animal welfare and stuff like that. But also create things that are a little bit different and unique and not necessarily things that anyone else is going to replicate, mostly because most people probably aren't willing to put in the amount of labor that I actually spend making them. So, I make like little tiny medallions that are this big and I'm doing hand for audio again. Yeah. So they're, once they're dried, well, I mean, they're about the size of a pog pre-dried.
Okay.
A little bit smaller than that. Actually, wait. Yeah. So they're inch and a quarter.
Okay.
Between an inch and a quarter circles, and then they're a couple millimeters high. And they break up super easily, which is a huge issue that I always had with a lot of treats, was they break off into giant chunks. And just being willing to do combinations and sort of mix things up in a little bit of a different way, and try and make things that not just dogs are going to be super obsessed over. I've had like at least a dozen people call my treats puppy crack. But also create something that's like very human user friendly, in terms of like smells, appearance, just like the way that it looks. A lot of it is like quite aesthetically pleasing as a general rule. Because when you're trying to use things, especially like meats and stuff like that are a little bit more expensive, you need to add that value for the consumer in a different way. I find, at least, it's, and dogs are dogs, and they generally love anything that's food. But
even just talking about adding that value, your packaging alone is beautiful looking, and I think just seeing what I've seen online and your Instagram and everything like that, it looks stunning. It looks like a quality product. And I make all of my labels. Oh, nice. And then I do all my labels, all my product shots. And so you had the CSA. Sorry, oh, no, don't worry. I interrupt myself all the time. Just because my brain stops. Where can people find you? Do you ship to America, I guess? And
I can't. Okay. CFI and USDA regulations, especially because a lot of what I do is with trying to create value in some of those like waste products. A lot of that stuff is super illegal to ship.
Yeah.
So like for beef and stuff like that, obviously nothing that's OTM. Pretty much all of the organs can't be shipped. It's like livers and kidneys, I think. So spleens can't do pancreas, can't do sweetbreads, can't do anything like that. The chain of like custody basically is very intense. Absolutely zero meat that is processed from over 30-month animals. So as my business exists now, I can't take the stuff that I'm doing here and send it to the US. So you also can't send any sheep over a year because we have scrapie, and I think you guys don't have scrapie.
Yeah. I don't know, but I'm assuming if you guys have it, then we have it too. Let's just.
Well, there's something with pigs that you guys have that we don't have.
Only pig disease I know.
Respiratory, maybe?
Maybe. A lot of pigs here have lung issues. Our pigs also have we get diamond skin too, which is like a rash, parasitic rash on pigs. I don't know. But anyway, how can people find your product if you live in the great country of Canada? And how can people contact you?
You can find stuff on the website at straight2summit.com. That's STRAIT, like a body of water. I did not think about how often I would have to spell out the name of my company when I named it. Everyone spells it with GH. So straight2summit.com. I've got a list of stockists there. I've got one in Winnipeg, a few in Vancouver and area, greater Vancouver area. Montreal, Edmonton.
Okay.
Some of them haven't ordered in a bit. And as well on Instagram at straight2summit. Yeah, most of the online stock is there. As long as Canada Post keeps shipping, I will keep filling orders and keep shipping and stuff, because I'm lucky enough to work by myself. And not really have to worry too much in terms of possibly contracting anything, because I haven't gone anywhere except my space in my house in like 10 days. Yeah. And the post office, but I just use the cart. One day I would eventually like to go to the US. My business isn't sustainable as a national level company just from operating out of the Comox Valley. So one day I've got somebody in Mount Vernon, Washington that I think would be a good person to head up a spot for me. So that would be, no, surprisingly. I don't think I can pay you enough, man.
Oh. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this week's episode of the Meat Block Podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. And off mic, Kate and I were talking just about music, and I asked her something that this is afterwards, and I just hit the stop record button, and she asked if she could plug JJ, which is a singer-songwriter that we both listen to, Andrew Jackson's Jihad, and because he's doing live free shows on his Instagram account, and I said of course, but I wasn't recording then, so for the first time in a while I'm bringing back the outro song, and here is one, and stay tuned after the song to listen to more conversation with Kate and I just talking about whatever.
Nobody knows everything. We know this to be true. difficult except what's in front of you. But it's complicated even under your nose. Bullshit math equations and your highs and your lows and your manic depression. It comes and it goes. Your parasympathetic nervous system reacts and you're in fight or flight mode. What made the world? Could I please speak to who's in charge? Everything is real, but it's also just as fake. From your daughter's birthday party to your grandmother's wake. And your bipolar illness, it comes and it goes. Your parasympathetic nervous system reacts, and you're in fight or flight. You're in fight or flight. You're in fight or flight mode. Tried to know which words to sing so many times, and I've tried to know which chord to play, and I've tried to make it rhyme, and I've tried to find the key that all good songs are in, and I've tried to find the notes to make that great resounding din. But there's a bad man in everyone, no matter who we are. There's a rapist and a Nazi living in our tiny hearts. Child pornographers and cannibals and politicians too. There's someone in your head waiting to fucking strangle you. So here's to you, Mrs. Robinson. People love you more, oh never mind. Oh never mind. In fucking fact, Mrs. Robinson, the world won't care whether you live or die. You live or die. Fucking fact, Mrs. Robinson, they probably hate to see your stupid face. Your stupid face. So here's to you, Mrs. Robinson. You live in an unforgiving place.
I don't have cable.
Mm-hmm.
I don't leave my house that often, especially now. And yeah, that's.
But
just
here's
forget that Coors Light exists sometimes.
But the real question is, do you have Netflix? And did you watch Tiger King?
No, I can't get into it.
Well, also
every time I try and watch it, and
there's nothing redeeming.
And
those people are horrible people.
Yeah, Joe Exotic's eyebrow ring is a metaphor for my sanity while watching more than 30 seconds of that show.
Yeah, it's just hanging in there. Just like I loved it. Just like I just love big characters, and I just love this. Like, it was amazing. But just like knowing like behind all of it, there's just like, you people don't. You guys aren't zoologists. You guys aren't caring about these animals. You guys like, I think that, but when you get past that and you get to the entertainment, but
the part where she murders her husband.
Yeah, she did. Carol Baskin.
Yeah, apparently there's a bunch of houses around that have signs with like honk if you think Carol Baskin murdered her husband.
Yeah.
So there's
I don't know. I just look forward to 2020 being taught in my son's history class, and it's going to be the coronavirus and Joe Exotic.
Oh no.
Two equal.
Yeah, it's oh yeah, they're equally important phenomenons for sure.
Yeah, and I think
Tiger King.
Well, I think the Tiger King could not be as popular if it wasn't for coronavirus. If it wasn't for the fact that everyone in the world is at home right now. Except for me. I got to go to work.
And has already watched through the entirety of Netflix, essentially, and they're just like, yeah, it's time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.